is a fifth dimension, beyond that which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. It is the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome. My name is Roy Bjellquist, and I really appreciate everybody being here for our second episode of Remembering Science Fiction Television Shows of the 1960s and the 1970s. This is the second episode in this series. And right now, I would like to welcome my co-host for this evening. He's a friend of mine that I've known for many years. He's a very talented man. He is an educator. He's a writer, director, and he is the co-founder of the Country Gate Playhouse in Belvedere, New Jersey. I would like to welcome Mr. Bill Scurato. Hi, Bill.
Well, hi, Roy. Thank you very much. I'm honored that you asked me to be part of this tonight, and I'm a big fan of the Twilight Zone. But I got to say that I'm certainly not an expert. I think your viewers, who a lot of them are experts, are going to figure that out really quickly. But I do appreciate the wonderful work that Rod Serling had done in that show. It was so innovative and made such a difference in the way television evolved. So thank you for having me, and I'll try not to make too many goofy mistakes.
Oh, not at all, Bill. And I really appreciate you being my co-host in this series. And I just, again, want to welcome you. Yeah, everybody, I just want to say, with the time that everything that's going on in the world, I really thought it would be an opportunity where we could take a break, for maybe about 45 minutes, an hour, or however long. And we started this series on Friday and hope to continue it. And it's a way to re-examine vintage science fiction. And Bill, leading into what you were just saying, I think your perspective on this show will be excellent because you watched the Twilight Zone, different episodes while growing up, and having that perspective on it and what you think of it as from an adult point of view from your childhood, and how you're looking at it in terms of from a theater perspective as well.
Yeah, well, it was really interesting, and I think I told you recently. I remembered one particular episode as a child, and I was probably 10 years old when I saw this episode, and can't remember the title of the episode right off the top of my head, but it was about a fellow who was robbing a house, and he was caught by the police. The police chased him, they shot him, and the next thing he knew, he was meeting with Sebastian Cabot was the actor, and I remember Sebastian Cabot from a couple of other programs that he had done. But this guy thought he was going to heaven, but as it turned out, he wasn't going to heaven. He was going to the other place. And, I remember going to bed that night, and I had the bejesus scare all night. So the Twilight Zone did that for me on several occasions. But I really, looking back on it, I really enjoyed it. But I remember it very clearly.
Oh, that's awesome. And the fact that you remember it so clearly, and I can only imagine watching that as a 10-year-old and, being terrified, because I know how science fiction of that era, influenced me. And there's things that I remember about different episodes of different episodic television that, to this day, when I think about it as a kid, I was like, kind of like hiding, behind the TV set or what have you, especially if my parents weren't around. It's just like, it's kind of interesting how that we all have those different types of memories.
Yeah. A Nice Place to Visit was the name of that episode. It was season 1, episode 28.
Gotcha.
And Larry Blyden, who you, when we were talking about it earlier, you remember Larry Blyden?
That, to this day, when I think about it as a kid, I was like, kind of like hiding, behind the TV set or what have you, especially if my parents weren't around. It's just like, it's kind of interesting how that we're having some technical difficulties, Bill. Live television.
A Nice Place to Visit was the name of that episode. Season 1. Am I doing something wrong, Roy?
No, it was me, Bill.
Larry Blyden.
I'm just showing that this is amateur hour here.
Well, that's okay. We're having fun. We'll get through it.
No, it's all good. Hopefully everybody can still hear me there. But yes, you were saying about Larry Blyden, and we were talking about that. And it's funny, Larry Blyden, when I heard the name, I remember that he used to do a game show back in the day, which was called What's My Line? And I remember, too, as when he would be interviewing the different people that were his guests on that show, because they would have like 4 different individuals, and they were trying to guess, who the person was. He would reference about his theater career, so it was kind of cool. But anyway, getting back to the Twilight Zone. We were talking about the pilot episode, Where Is Everybody? And that was very unique because in that launched in 1959. And again, this series is about dealing with shows that are taking place in the 1960s. And we started off with One Step Beyond, which was the anthology series that premiered in January of 59. Twilight Zone actually premiered later that year in October of 59. So they kind of were going side by side. But even though they were both an anthology series, they definitely had a different tone of their own, which was very unique. And I think Rod Serling brought his own perception with his stories.
Absolutely, and I think, and I was as a teacher, and I was a theater teacher, and I was also an English teacher, and there was so much literate about the Twilight Zone. There are, you can see the literary terms that we taught kids in high school. The characters were so well drawn, and you saw the definite conflict and the wonderful resolution at the end of each episode. All those things were very evident in each of the episodes. Right.
And that, what you were saying too is, with those twists, you would always be expecting one thing to happen. And then, with the example of that one episode that you grew up watching and you remembered it from your child, he's thinking maybe, he's in heaven and actually he's in the other place. So it was kind of darker, right. But yeah, it was definitely what Twilight Zone was known for doing. And in researching, I read too that Rod Serling was very specific about what he did, about what he wrote. And he wrote the majority of the episodes that were done for the series. And
right.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say also, we were talking about this this pilot episode, and I was surprised to see that there was an initial version of it in which Rod Serling was not the narrator. Now, he was the narrator in every episode, as far as I know, but in that first episode, it was originally narrated, voiceovered by a man named Westbrook Van Voorhis. Did you know that?
I did not know that. That's very interesting.
but then I guess they found that this guy was not going to be available to do the rest of the series, so they started looking for somebody else to do it. And finally, Rod Serling said, "Okay, well, I'll just try to do it myself." And I wonder if there would have really been as big a success with Twilight Zone if he hadn't been the narrator.
Yeah, because Twilight Zone, that was a stamp. If you think about it, over the years, over the decades, there's been so many, imitations and, I don't even want to say satires, but so many examples of where people have used, that theme in his introduction. So somehow I would have to, in retrospect, think that it probably would be something totally different, because that was his stamp that was on it. And interesting enough, too, the first season, he actually did not appear in front of the camera. It was all voiceover as far as doing the narration. What I did hear was that he wasn't very comfortable about being in front of the camera. So, it wasn't until the second season. And the one thing, too, is if you watch the majority of the times that he was always holding a cigarette. So maybe that was kind of relaxing him.
Yeah, I did notice he always had a cigarette. And a lot of the characters, in today's world, when we see somebody on television with a cigarette, we kind of look twice. But in those days, there was a lot of smoking going on television. And in the Twilight Zone, it seemed like in every episode, the cigarettes were part of it in some way.
Yeah, exactly. It was like a trademark. It was like if you didn't have a cigarette, it was like, something was kind of off.
I don't know if a cigarette company was one of the sponsors. Do you know if that was the case?
I don't, and I probably should have researched that. And you know what? It probably was in thinking about it. I know that the Blu-ray sets that are available, they actually have a lot of the promotional spots, and I believe they actually have a lot of the advertisements as well as the showing the sponsors. So the next time we do talk about the Twilight Zone, I'll definitely look into that. But I wouldn't be surprised though if that wasn't the case, especially with that. We have a lot of people out there that are chiming in, and it's great to see everybody out there. Just want to say hello to everybody. Hi, Marianne. Hi, Leslie. Mary Beth, how you doing out there? Thanks for joining. Mike, Vince. I cannot call, Vince Vinny. I mean, it would just be wrong. I think I'm probably the only one on the planet. Do you agree with me on that one, Bill?
Is that my Vinny that's out there?
Yeah.
My Vinny! Yay, Vinny!
He said he has a little circle spinning around. That's okay, Vince. We understand.
Just remember, Vinny, less is more. Less is more.
And you know what the best part of that, Bill, is he can't respond. His type. Hi, Diane. How are you? Let me see. And Martin's out there. Warren. Great to see everybody out there. Thanks so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. It's just nice to take a break, and hopefully I won't have any more technical difficulties. I'll be honest with you. That was all me on that, and I got to hear myself as I was speaking, which was kind of a scary thought there. So,
when we talk about less is more, I just wanted to make one point, Roy, was that I was thinking about the fact that the Twilight Zone was relatively early in the history of television. The medium really hadn't been mass appeal for too long. But when it first came out, there was a lot of radio programs that tried to make the transition to TV. And so they were used to saying a lot of words. The language was so important to it. And it really didn't work so well when they tried to transform a radio program to a TV show. Rod Serling in the Twilight Zone was able to really use the visuals involved in the drama and was able to make that such an important part of what we saw.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because if you think about it, it was not only intellectual, but it was visually appealing to the audience. I mean, he really used the atmosphere that was around to convey the emotions and the tone of the show. And there was so many different types of stories where that was important too. And interesting enough, one of the things I came across when reading was that the majority of the episodes, well, actually the entire series, was filmed at MGM, with the exception of the pilot, which was Where Is Everybody? That was shot at Universal Studios. But what they were able to do by shooting at MGM, they were actually able to have access to all, to not only to the studio, but also to the props that were available. And, there were a lot of different types of movies and things that were filmed over that period of time and prior to that. And one of the things is, and this is from a science fiction standpoint and reference, the spaceship that was utilized in the movie The Forbidden Planet, which was filmed in 1956, was utilized in an episode that we will be talking about, which is The Invaders. So that was kind of cool, where they were actually using that. And then also Robbie the Robot, which is also known too, which back in the day.
Yeah. As a community theater person, I got to say that you always try to find and make use of as much as you can that you don't have to go out and buy. So I heard in a interview, I was listening to an interview that Rod Serling had done, was he was kind of complaining about the low budget that they had for those to produce those episodes. So I guess that was fortunate that they were out at that studio and they were able to take advantage of the props that had been used previously, and they were able to make things work that way.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point, because it's about the budget and what you have, and and sometimes you have to recycle, and that's a prime example of where that was was being done.
For sure.
One of the episodes that, in fact, Mary Beth just commented, she said, "What was the episode with Tiny Ron Howard and everyone telling him he did good, or am I remembering wrong?" we were just talking about him being on the episode with Ron Howard, which is an episode that was one of a favorite of mine, was Walking Distance. And that actually was starring Gig Young. And it was, I believe, the 5th episode of the Twilight Zone series. And it was a very nostalgic type of episode, wouldn't you say, Bill?
It was. It was, it was a hometown. And in fact, the kind of the theme of it is that, this is a guy who ended up going back to the hometown where he grew up many years later. And there was Ron Howard sitting on the curb. And of course, when I was watching this, I said, wait a minute, that's Opie. that was the first thing. That was the first thing I thought. But it was a beautiful episode. And it was, reflective of youth. And that was, I think, one of the themes of it, holding on to your youth, remembering your youth, but knowing that you can really never go back to your youth. Right. That's something that happens only once. And it is really a beautiful episode. And the other thing that I noticed, I read about for that, Roy, was that the music for a lot of the episodes were it was stock music that had been composed, most of them by Bernard Herrmann, who was also involved in many other projects. But he wrote specifically the score for that episode, A Nice Place to Visit, that we're talking about. And it was a beautiful score. It really underlined underscored the nostalgia of the episode. Of course, I'm a big Bernie Herrmann fan because he was also the composer for Citizen Kane. Oh, okay. I was a big Orson Welles fan, so I was very interested to see that.
Rosebud, right?
Rosebud.
Yeah. Walking Distance.
The other thing I want to say about that, Roy, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Gig Young was the main character in that.
Right.
And I think Gig Young was an excellent actor. He was great. But I have to say, he gets a bad rap because he's remembered by many as the original Waco Kid in Blazing Saddles.
Oh,
okay. Did you know that?
I did not know that, and I probably should have known that.
Well, I mean, he was in there, and he was involved. They had already started filming. They were in production, but Mr. Gig Young apparently had a little bit of a drinking problem.
Yeah, I did that. That I did know. In fact,
Mr. Mel Brooks decided that it wasn't going to work out. So they kind of. I heard that they had to kind of carry Gig Young out, which is a terrible thing to say. I'm sorry, Gig, wherever you are. But then Gene Wilder came in, and he became the new Waco Kid, and he actually, I think, did some of the writing in the film as well.
That's an excellent tidbit, Bill. I had no idea about that. So and that's what's so great about having discussions like this, and it's always something that is really appealed to me is finding out. I mean, when you see actors in a show or something that you really enjoy, whether it be a movie or a television series, to me it's always very pleasing to see what their work was prior to them being in that specific show or episode or movie. And it's just seeing how their career even develops along the way. So I think that's really, really cool.
Having said that, though, I thought Gig Young did a great job in this particular episode. I thought he was really great.
No, I would have to agree. I think he really just nailed the part, and you really felt what he was feeling. And when he goes back in time, and he's going to the house that he grew up in, and then he's trying to reconnect with his his mom and dad, and then when he sees his mom and he says, wait a minute, how can you be here? It almost, you feel the chills going through you because it's like you're feeling the pain that that's resonating. And then what happens is, he winds up leaving his wallet behind, and then he's trying to catch up with himself as a youth. And then his father has that discussion with him, and about that there is only one carnival, there's only one merry-go-round, and there's only one per customer, one summer per customer, and it just it's just very nostalgic, and it just it's very kind of gives you the chills. I guess I tend to be sensitive anyway, but yeah. It was really, it
was very moving, the whole thing, and the atmosphere that they were able to create with the small town atmosphere. I thought it was so visual. The whole thing was just so visual and very moving.
Very, and the cinematography too, because when he's on the merry-go-round and he's after looking for the young Martin, and then Martin falls off, and then he hurts his leg and he's unconscious. The way the children just start moving very slowly, and then everything just starts to come to a standstill. I mean, it was just almost like time was stopping for that moment where he was almost catching up with himself. It was just very visual. It was very well done.
That's a great point, Roy. Absolutely. I think very dynamic. The direction. I mean, that's the thing with the Twilight Zone. Yeah, the writing was great, but we saw some really great actors. I was mentioning to you before, as I watched a bunch of episodes this weekend, getting ready to visit with you tonight, and I was amazed at how many actors I recognized.
Yeah.
Some of them I probably remember from prior to their Twilight Zone experience, but a lot of them I recognized from what they did afterward. So it's really fun to go through, and you have your phone and you're looking up their resume. Now, who is that? I got to look that guy up on IMDb because I recognize him or I recognize her.
Well, absolutely. And interesting too, talking about walking distance, the actor that actually played Gig Young's father, his name was Frank Overton, and he actually was a character actor, but I know him from the classic Star Trek series, which was the episode This Side of Paradise, and he played Sandoval, Elias Sandoval, who was the head of the colony, and it was an episode with Jill Ireland, who was married to Charles Bronson back in the day, and it was a beautiful love story that was written, and it was originally written for Sulu to fall in love, with this woman, Lively Kimoni. But what happens is it was changed when I think DC Fontana, who was a script editor and then became a huge writer and a huge instrumental part of classic Star Trek. She said this has to be, a Spock love story, and it was incredible. So, but anyway, I'm getting into Star Trek there, and we'll talk about that another time.
That's very interesting. That's really great to make that connection.
Yeah, but again, with the actors, another episode we were going to talk about was that, which is kind of a famous one, is Eye of the Beholder, and that one for the people out there is with Janet Tyler, who is, when it starts out, she's in bandages and she's having reconstructive surgery done to enhance her appearance. And I guess they've done several different types of operations and they have not taken. And this is going to be like the final one that is going to take place in order to, basically help her with her so-called condition. And you never see her face. You never see, because she's in bandages, and then you never see the doctors either, which is interesting.
Yeah, that really, I don't remember that one from my younger days, but I really did enjoy that. And what was very interesting, I think, the fact, we didn't see her face. We understood that her face was bandaged. We didn't see anybody else's face. The shadows and the lighting of that episode was, so effective. But I also noticed that the direction, the actors, overemphasizing their hand gestures, overemphasizing the way they walked, because we couldn't really read their faces. We had to kind of figure their stories from their movement, their gait, and their gestures. And I thought that was really fascinating to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it was a visual that really enhanced the episode. I mean, you could have had a simple story where this woman is having surgery, and they filmed it on in a certain manner that would not have been visually stimulating, but with all the shadows and everything going on in the background, it really added to the aura of the story. And then, as we all know, when they go to take off the bandages, and then you see her. She's gorgeous. She's beautiful. And as Warren is pointing out, it was actress Donna Douglas that was, there. And she's screaming. And then you see the doctors, and they basically look like pigs. I mean, they're all disformed, and and they're going after her, and they're trying to get her. And she's running out, and then she runs into this separate ward. And when she gets there, she's greeted by this guy that looks like, he's a model. And she's been basically gone to the place where the people that are supposedly ugly are isolated and they have their own area. And then they come out, quoting, that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It was a very, very good twist.
Right. And that was another twist that, maybe we weren't expecting, but when we got it, oh, yeah, I get it. Now, did Rod Serling write that one? I'm trying to. Written by Rod Serling.
Yes.
So, and Donna Douglas, was that the same one that was in the Beverly Hillbillies?
It was. That is her. Yes. That was the same. Yeah. I had actually looked it up. She was 28 years old when she did that Twilight Zone episode, believe it or not. And she was not the same woman in the Bandages. It was another actress that was actually in the Bandages. So,
now you told me that the other night. And I couldn't believe that. That's fascinating.
Yeah. So, and I think they did that because of her voice, but I think it added to it. But yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. Just want to give a shout out to, hey, Deborah, how you doing? Hi, Jackie. I'm seeing you out there. Thanks for joining. Hi, Michelle. And some people are commenting about the Star Trek episodes with William Shatner. Yes, in fact, now that we're mentioning that, and we just covered Eye of the Beholder, incidentally, the next episode, which was in the second season of The Twilight Zone, was the first episode that William Shatner had done, which was Nick of Time, which is a classic episode. And as everybody remembers out there, this is where it starts out as this newlywed couple drives into this town. And what's happened is their car is being towed and it's in need of repair. And they meet with the tow person. And incidentally, a little bit of trivia, the actor that was playing the mechanic was Stafford Rapp, who was later known for his portrayal of Chief O'Hara in the classic Batman series. Now, that wouldn't be until 6 years later, because this Nick of Time was in, I believe it was televised in October of 1960. So you figure it was probably filmed, somewhere in the middle of 1960, and then Batman premiered in January of 1966. So it was kind of interesting to see him in that, more of a serious type of role. But again, it's another wonderful example of actors, playing, character actors playing in different parts.
Right. Very, very interesting. And of course, I was was surprised to see Shatner in this role. Of course, you identify him with Star Trek, of course, and I loved him in Boston Legal. I was so impressed with his work in Boston Legal. He's a fine actor, but I really liked his work in this episode of the Twilight Zone, Nick of Time. I thought he was great.
Yeah, no, it was a very good part, very natural, and he's essentially this person that's very superstitious, and he comes to anything he does as far as if he's walking, he's walking with his wife, and they get separated, and he walk on the pole and says bread and butter, to kind of bring good luck. 4-leaf clovers, he was saying, having, and then when they go into that diner, and then they come to this mystic that supposedly can tell, the future. And it just kind of starts off, you're putting a penny in, which, in 1960, I guess is, a little bit more than it is today. and they're trying to basically, they're asking questions. Oh, Vince, did you catch it? Uh-oh. Basically, I said basically, so that's my one, so you know. But anyway, Vince always busts my chops.
Vinny. Vinny. Oh, come on, Vinny. Give me a
But anyway, when he does that, it it's he's asking the questions, and then they're kind of, his wife is kind of amused by it, but then he starts to get wrapped up in it, and then the tension starts to mount, and then they're wondering if they're going to get out of the town, and then he's starting to ask more and more questions that are more detailed, and it comes to where their safety is involved, and that they should leave there. I think it was at 3:00, and they should just stay there. And then what happens is, she's eager to get out and get some air, and he's stalling, and he's ordering this and he's ordering that, and then they finally, go out into the town, and he just is like watching, he's looking around, and he's like, and she's thinking, what's going on? And then what happens is when they go to cross the street, they almost get clipped by the truck. And then, of course, then there's the town square where it's saying it's 3:00.
Right. Yeah, something that I noticed also in that was the wife, of course, was very skeptical through the whole exchange with the mystic seer, and they kept putting pennies in, and I guess we don't have too many pennies around today, but I guess they had plenty of pennies around in those days. But one of the things he asked was about, I guess he was up for a promotion at his job.
Yes.
And so one of the things he asked was, am I going to get this promotion? And I think the mystic said something like, I guess it's already been decided in your favor, something like that.
Right.
And so then he went and called his office and found out, yes, he did get the promotion. So he was more in tune than ever that there was maybe something to this. And that kind of raised the suspense when it got to be 3:00 and he left.
Yeah, that just added to the what he felt was the truth that this was really indeed a mystic seeker, or seer rather, and was able to predict the future. No, that's an excellent point, Bill, because it was almost like a step by step where it was building up to that point, and then it truly happened. And then after that, they wound up going back there and then asking more questions, and then finally, it's almost like love conquers all, because he sees what's happening, and that he's so enwrapped in it, and he doesn't want to leave it, but then he's actually able to break away from it with her, and they stand up, and he looks back at it and saying, we're going to do what we want when we want to, and it's like, it's their choice, they're not being controlled. But then what happens is, what's really kind of like dark and sinister is they're exiting. This couple's coming in, and it's a tortured couple that which was in that situation, and as they were, but were unable to escape because of their fear being taken over. And it was almost disturbing. And even Rod Serling, when he's doing his quote at the end in narration, he's saying, there's one couple that was unable to escape, and then there's another couple that was able to escape in one of the darker areas of the Twilight Zone. And it's like, whoa.
Right. Yeah, it was very interesting because, in terms of the story itself, the woman who played Shatner's wife was, really saved the day, because had she not, come to the realization, I don't want to be told the future, I want to make a future. And she prompted to, get out of there. And, after this older couple came in, and, we found out, what fate was, we were happy to see the Shatner and his wife drive out of town. So
yeah.
it was actually a fairly happy ending for the viewer.
Right, exactly. It really made the difference.
Yeah.
Now
it was a good episode. It was good.
Yeah, it's definitely, and a couple of people out there are saying too, because of about William Shatner being in it. That episode he's known for, but then it wasn't until that, and again, that was in 1963, when he did Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, which was really, the one that when everybody thinks of William Shatner with the gremlin on the plane, that's the one they kind of like go to immediately. And they even did, the Twilight Zone movie, which came out in, I believe it was in 1983. They referenced that, but that was with John Lithgow. But I won't go into that. But going on to the episodes, though, the other one that I know that you enjoyed was Time Enough at Last, and that was with Burgess Meredith.
Yes, indeed. And that was, again, you think about Burgess Meredith, and I think most people who are not, particularly big into the Twilight Zone, think about Burgess Meredith as Mickey, the trainer in Rocky.
Right.
And that's certainly, what he is, his claim to fame, I would guess.
Oh, definitely.
In revisiting this, I was so impressed with his work in this. And then I found out that he had also done several other Twilight Zone episodes. But I was really kind of blown away. This was a tour de force, and a lot of the Twilight episodes were tour de forces for the primary act. It particularly was here, I think, for Burgess Meredith. And I thought it was interesting. We were talking about the literary devices that were used in the Twilight Zone, and within the first few minutes, the close-up comes on Burgess Meredith's character's name was Henry Bemis, who was a teller at a bank.
Right.
And the close-up comes up on, you see these Coke bottle glasses on this guy.
Yeah.
And those glasses become such an important part of the whole story. We might not realize it at the time. We're kind of jarred by the way they look at the beginning, but we'll find out eventually that they become a very important part of what we're about to see.
No, that is so true. And yeah, in fact, both Diane and Isabel are saying classic episodes, and they really were. I mean, that was almost like a bit of foreshadowing when as you indicated, with the glasses, because that was an integral part of the episode. And the other thing too, Bill, I'm kind of, and Mary Beth even pointed out too, Burgess Meredith, again, about 6 years later, he became known as the Penguin from the Batman TV series, and he did that for like about three seasons as well too.
That is absolutely true. That's a good point. I kind of forgot about that just now, but yeah, I mean, he was very well known for that role as well.
Yeah. So it's amazing. Again, another example of, the actors, doing diverse roles, and you think about it, going from Mr. Bemis to the villainous Penguin, and then to Mickey in the Rocky movies. Wow. What a difference. But yeah, that was a classic episode. It was a great episode, but it was almost tragic because he wanted to have his books, and he just wanted to be able to read, and he just wanted to delve and have that opportunity. He wanted the solitude of that, but instead it was he was left with the loneliness, because when he lost his glasses, he lost his books.
Yeah, it was really loneliness versus solitude. I guess what he wanted was the solitude. He wanted to be able to read whenever he wanted to, but when he found himself alone in the world, he didn't like that so much. That's not really what he bargained for.
Yeah. It was definitely a tragic ending for him. It really, really was. The other episode that we talked about a little bit and comes to mind, and this one is another fan favorite, and you and I were discussing this offline, is the episode with Agnes Moorehead, The Invaders.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was brilliant because there was no dialogue in it, for the exception at the very end. But I mean, the acting in that itself was very, very well done, because she essentially carried the episode.
She sure did. I mean, I thought she was amazing. And of course, I knew a little bit about Agnes Moorehead because, again, I'm a Citizen Kane fan, and she was a prominent part of that film. And of course, again, a lot of people know her from Bewitched in her later years, but I thought her performance in this was unbelievable. And I mentioned to you the other night when we were chatting about this that I thought she was, fairly young. She looked very agile as she was jumping all around that set, running away from those little guys.
Yeah.
But you looked it up, and she in 1900, I think you said.
Yeah.
And so she would have been 60 years old at that time, but she looked a lot younger than that, I thought, during her performance. I thought she was phenomenal.
Yeah. No. I know. To think that she was born in 1900. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, she'd be like 120 today. But and again, Twilight Zone, we're literally at the 60-year mark with this series. I mean, it's crazy when you think between 1959 and 1964, it was on for 5 seasons, and it's in that range. But her performance was very, very well done. And again, the twist at the end, and hopefully I'm not giving anything away. I mean, these episodes have been out for a long time now. When you actually, see and hear that, the aliens are contacting, their planet, but the aliens are not aliens. They're actually humans. and that's their spaceship, and they're basically saying they're being attacked, and she's a giant is what essentially it's coming to, and they're trying to get away, and then she basically batters the spaceship, and then it nearly gets destroyed. So again, there's that twist that takes place, and it's very, very effective. And again, these little props for people, it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, it really that surprised me. I remember this episode from this live. It's so ironic when we find out that it is not a foreign alien as the culprits here. It is us.
Right.
And very, very, and I think the dialogue we got at the end was that we're not going to be able to cope with this race. We've got to get out of here. Right?
Exactly. It's too much. There was too much for us or for them at that point in time. Oh, I'm getting my chops. My son Ryan. Hey, Rye, how you doing out there? He's busting my chops. He's saying spoilers, and then I got Warren spoilers. Okay, guys. All right. You guys have got a good sense of humor there. I hear you. I hope I didn't give anything away. You guys never saw these episodes. Well, Ryan probably didn't, but yeah. Anyway, it's all in fun. Oh, and actually,
it's all in fun.
There's actually a lot of. In fact, somebody had commented, and I was just going back. I'm trying to do this, and I'm trying to talk and chew gum at the same time, everybody. So we're going through this. Mary Beth brought up a good point too, that the Hollywood studios, the way they casted back in in the 60s is totally different than the way things are done today. So and it's so true. I mean, the way Hollywood has changed. I mean, that's literally old. Wouldn't you say, Bill?
Yeah, absolutely. And I see that Bob Mack has a good point here. A little bit of social commentary in the invaders, who the invaders are, depend on your point of view. And that's the great thing about the Twilight Zone, because it raised points that you could discuss with people, and they wouldn't get mad if you didn't agree with them.
Oh, and then there's another Mike Rizzo. He's saying to serve man it, and then Captain Phil, how are you, Captain Phil? Good to see you out there. It's a cookbook. It's a cookbook. Funny thing about that episode, and it's not one that we really discussed, but To Serve Man was an episode that dealt with these aliens that come to Earth, and they're being very welcoming. And in fact, they're very tall, and they're giants. In fact, the actor that's playing the alien in the lead role is Richard Kiel, who would later go on to do the 2 James Bond movies, The Spy Who Loved Me and Moonraker, and he was Jaws. So he's cast as the alien in this.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And what happens is they present a book to us, and the scientists are trying to decipher it. And what they get out of it is the title is To Serve Man. So it's wow, these beings are coming to us and they want to serve man. How that's so gracious. So what they do is they actually have a program going on where the humans go to their world. And Lloyd Bachner, who is the actor, one of the scientists, or maybe I don't think he was a scientist. Maybe he was a scientist. Is going to go to visit their world, and as he's going up the ramp, and what's happening is his secretary comes running, after him, or his assistant, and says, Dr. So and so, we found out the title of the book, To Serve Man, and it means basically it's a cookbook. That's what it is. And meaning to serve man is not to help mankind, it's to cook them. And then what happens is he tries to get off the ship, and they grab him, and they put him in the ship, and it takes off, and he's basically going to be chopped liver. So and that was the twist. And the interesting thing is, it was funny because Lloyd Bachner was an character actor, had done a lot of episodic television from, the 50s, 60s, 70s. He actually was in the Naked Gun movie, I believe. And what he did was he was and Vince could correct me on this. He comes out and he starts yelling, "It's a cookbook, it's a cookbook." And it was kind of like a homage to the Twilight Zone being in there. So that was kind of cool. But yeah, that was really, really good.
Hey, Roy, can I go back for 1 minute to Time Enough at Last real quick?
Yeah, absolutely, Bill.
Yeah, I just had one thought about that. One of the things that I noticed when I was watching that was that this man, Henry Bemis, he was addicted to reading. It wasn't just a casual thing that passed him by. It was something that he could live without doing. And even when he was getting his rear end chewed out by the boss in the office on his way out, he couldn't help himself but kind of lean in and read the magazines that were sitting on the end table. And I was thinking about the fact that it kind of can relate to us today with our phones in a way, that we've become, in some cases, so addicted to our phones that we can't have a human relationship with each other, because we can't have a meal without checking our phone every 5 minutes, or we can't have a human face-to-face conversation. So I thought that kind of was a parallel there. And I remember, the fact of the matter was that this guy's addiction, caused him not to do a good job at the bank, and it probably also caused him to not have a very good marriage. Now his wife, I don't know if I could have had a good marriage to her either. She was a little scary.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that he was addicted to the reading, it wasn't all everybody else's fault. It was partly his fault too.
Right. No, Bill, that's an excellent point. And it just goes to show you how, it's something of the times. And it's, that would have been for that period of time in, 1959. But now we're fast forwarding to 2020. And it really, to your point with the phone, it's the same type of thing. And it really, really ties in. And that's an excellent observation about that. That's an excellent point. Yeah. It's very well said. Vincent.
Thank you so much.
No, absolutely. No. And this is why it's great to, for us to have this type of conversation and to discuss the because, it's going over, these type of things and things that, you'll see from your perspective. I'll see it from my perspective, and our, viewers out there will see from their perspectives as well.
Yeah. Well, kind of along those same lines, if I could just add one more thing, is that, kind of the technology that this guy Bemis had to deal with was his glasses. Mm-hmm. And when he lost his glasses, he was totally up the creek, so to speak.
Yeah.
Whereas if we were to lose our technology today, especially where we are right now,
right,
it would be another parallel, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Everything would kind of come to a halt, and that's an excellent point. Vince said I've hit 3 or 4 basicallys. Thanks, Vince. And then also he's saying that it was the Naked Gun. It was the second Naked Gun when Lloyd Bachner was on there, and he was yelling it was a cookbook. Yeah. Marianne out there. Hi, Marianne. She's asking about, was there an episode of Twilight Zone where the woman was pregnant and envisioning a plane crash into her home? They move her, and then the plane hits the motel. I don't specifically remember that episode, Marianne, the way you're describing it, but I do recall an episode where a woman was afraid to actually go on the plane because she has this envision of it blowing up. And what happens is she sees this woman in the morgue, and at the very last minute when she's going to go on the plane, she's actually in a hospital, and it's almost like a recurring type of dream that she's having. And I think what happens is in the dream, she gets to the morgue, and then the woman says, "Room for one more." And then she goes running and she's screaming because she's totally frightened. And when she gets discharged from the hospital, what happens is she's going to go on a flight. She gets up to the point where you're going up the steps to go on the plane. And then at the door is the flight attendant and says, "Room for one more." And it's the same woman, and she goes down the stairs and screams in terror. And then what happens is she goes inside, the plane takes off and explodes. And it was almost like it was like a premonition, and it was kind of like it was, yeah. it was kind of bizarre. But that was, an example of that. And I think that might be the episode you're referring to, Marianne, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I don't know that episode, though. It sounds interesting. I'd like to see it.
Yeah. In fact, the woman that plays the flight attendant, here's some Star Trek trivia for everybody out there that are Trekkers, is actress Arlene Martell, who later would be in the second season episode of classic Star Trek, Amok Time, and played Spock's wife, T'Pring. So anyway, just putting that out there. So yeah, definitely have to check that out, Bill. And then the other episode that you and I were talking about, Living Doll, which had Telly Savalas before he did Kojak. Am I right?
Right. He had a little bit of hair when he did this episode. I noticed that our friend the Debster is in the chat room tonight. And she was talking about this episode with somebody else earlier, and so I think she's interested in what we say about this. But it was an interesting episode, and I thought all the actors, and particularly I got to say the child actors that were chosen for the Twilight Zone. I haven't seen a bad one yet. I mean, today when you see kids on sitcoms, some of them are not so hot. But what you saw in the Twilight Zone episodes, I thought they were all pretty good.
Oh yeah,
and the little girl in this was really excellent.
That was a terrifying episode too. That episode, almost like it really kind of like freaks you out because she's being literally. Well, actually, the doll is almost tormenting them with everything that's going on, and this episode almost, in my opinion, was a inspiration for the Chucky movies, the Child Play movies, Talking Tina. And then the other thing that comes to mind, Bill, do you remember in the 1970s, there was a movie that Karen Black did that was called The Trilogy of Terror? Does that sound familiar at all? Do you recall that?
It sounds familiar. I don't think I saw it. I'm not that familiar with it, but I do. I recognize that title. Yeah. Yeah,
it was basically Karen. Well, my fifth basically. Karen Black did 3. I just had to do that. Sorry, Vince. Just had to put that out there. Inside joke. Vince. Karen Black was playing 3 different types of characters, and it was like a type of horror. But in one of the specific episodes, she's being terrorized by this doll. And it's coming at her, and she's doing everything she can to destroy it. And it's very scary. And I actually remember how you remember when you were a kid with that Twilight Zone episode. I remember this movie being on. My parents were watching it, or more my mom was watching it because she liked the horror stuff. And I was sick. I was having like a fever, and I remember going to bed, and I was like really creeped out. They were kind of dark and everything. I was probably like, I think this came out like in the mid 70s. I was probably like 10 years old, and it was really creepy. And I was just like afraid, of what was going to, come out from under the bed or, out of the closet, because it was like, this possessed doll. Yeah. They're saying that, Rob Cash and hey Rob, and then Rob Barnes. Hey Rob, how you doing? The Zuni doll. And it was this thing that was just really, it was evil. And I was like, I was somewhat feverish, and I was like worried I was going to be attacked by this thing. And then finally I went to sleep. But it's amazing how like 45 years later, you remember these things from when you were a kid.
Yeah. Well, our friend the Debster said creepy, and I don't know if she's talking about you or me or the doll.
Thanks, Deb. I'll see you on stage, Deb. Probably me she was talking about. The doll wasn't that bad. But yeah, I mean, there's so many Twilight Zone episodes out there. And, Diane commented earlier too, the Jeopardy room, which, Martin Landau, he was in that episode. That wasn't an episode that you and I got to talk about, but it was more of a suspense type of an episode. With this, killer against this guy that's is on the run, and the actor that played him was a character actor, and I can't think of his name right now. And he played German type of evil characters in his day, and he did a lot of episodic television. But Martin Landau was cast as this man that was on the run from him, and they actually wind up meeting, and he gets tracked down, and Martin Landau's got the gun, and he says, I'm holding the cards, and the guy says to him, he says, you know what, we're gonna, let's just have a drink. So he says, okay, you take the first drink. So this guy, the German guy, takes the drink. Nothing happens. Martin Landau takes a drink, and he passes out, and he's not cold. And what happens is he wakes up, and he's got 3 hours to find the bomb that's in the room. And if he tries to make an escape for the window, he'll get shot. If he tries to run out the door, he'll get shot because they're watching him. And the guy and his evil assistant, Boris. And what happens is the phone rings after like 2 hours, and Martin Landau's character goes to answer it, and then he thinks about it, and then he doesn't answer it, and then the phone rings again, and he just lets it go. So what happens is maybe a half hour later, Martin Landau makes a break for the door, and he runs out, and then they try to shoot him down. Then the next scene is Boris and this evil, guy are in the room, and they're like, you know what, we'll get him in the next town. And then what happens is the phone rings. And then Boris answers the phone, and the guy goes, "No, don't answer it." And it blows up. And then on the other end of the phone is Martin Landau calling. And then the operator says, "Your party got disconnected." And he goes, "No." And he goes, "I got through, operator. Thank you." And that was the end. It was it was a good episode. Sorry, I put that in. Another spoiler alert.
Oh boy, we're getting killed on this.
I figured I'd put that out there before somebody comments on me, but
Yeah, speaking of Martin Landau, this is totally off topic, and I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
Have you ever seen a Woody Allen movie called Crimes and Misdemeanors?
Yes, I have. He was excellent in that.
And Martin Landau just stole the movie. He was absolutely fantastic in that. I thought he was. I always thought he was a great actor, but boy, that was kind of like the PhD with his tongue. Really wonderful.
Yeah. That's just another example of wonderful, talent, being showcased in, their earlier work. But
yeah. No,
Bill, I really want to thank you for, taking the time to go through these episodes and take a, journey down the Twilight Zone. There's so many more episodes we could probably cover and, discuss. And I'm sure, there, lots and lots to talk about. But it's just been a really nice time.
I appreciate you having me with you, Roy. I really do. And you're doing a great job with this. I think people are really enjoying it. So
thanks.
Good for you.
No, I appreciate it. It's a nice distraction for everything that's going on in the world. So it's just, a way for us to all kind of like, bond together for at least an hour and just have, some moments together. So again, I really appreciate that. And I, hope that you'd like to come on, sometime again in the future.
Sure. If you don't think I stunk up the place too much, I'd be glad to.
No, not at all, Bill. My goodness. Bill, so tell me, do you have any, some things that are in the works that you'd like to let us?
Okay, yeah, thank you. A couple of things. I just wanted to, I know there are some theater folks out there listening. I just wanted to, give an idea that our theater, the Country Gate Playhouse in Belvedere, we are temporarily, interrupted right now. We were in production for a musical called Pippin, the Bob Fosse, Stephen Schwartz musical. We've been in rehearsal for several weeks, but like everybody else, the virus has interrupted us. So we are rehearsing from home. We are working from home, and we plan that we will be back in business as soon as we can. But obviously, we had been originally scheduled to open on April 18th. We're not going to open on April 18th. Stay tuned. We'll let you know. Watch our website, watch our Facebook page, and we'll let you know, the progress as we go along. Everybody out there, please stay safe. Follow the guidelines that have been set up, and we want everybody back. The other thing, if I could, real quickly,
absolutely,
plug. I've written 2 books, believe it or not.
I know, it's awesome.
One is a memoir called "Makes a Man's Blood Pound," which is basically about my putting my work in developing the community theater that started out in Washington, New Jersey, and has ended up in Belvedere, New Jersey. It's almost 50 years old now. So there's some interesting stories there, including some stories about you, Roy, and some stories about our friend Vinny, who is still in the chat probably. So you don't want to miss that. And then I also wrote a novel called Ragdoll. It's about a young woman who thought she had her life all set up and cleared to go in front of her. She ran into some obstacles and was able to find her way back into a happy life through working in the community. So if you're interested in a fast read novel, I think you would enjoy that. They're both available on Amazon, by the way.
No, thank
you, Roy.
Oh, absolutely, Bill. Thank you for sharing that. And, the theater is, we're so lucky to have, the theater that you and Carolyn created. And to think that it's going to be, almost celebrating its 50th anniversary in 2 years is incredible. So for that. And again, thank you for being on. I just want to thank everybody out there. Also, just want to put a plug out there for Mike Rizzo. Mike is going to be doing a show similar to this coming down the pike, and it's going to be called Sci-Fi Distilled. And he will be talking about science fiction shows of the 1980s and the 1990s. So stay tuned for that. There'll be more information in regards to that. Next week, we will be back on. It will be Friday at 7 p.m., which is going to be on April 10th, I believe, if I've got my dates correct. April 11th. I'm sorry. It'll be Friday at 7 p.m. April 10th. I stand corrected again. April 10th, this coming Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and we will be going into our Irwin Allen weekend. And I will be on at that time with my co-host discussing Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. So stay tuned for that. And again, thank you, everybody. Please stay safe out there. Social distancing is very important. There's a lot of talk of, what's coming down the pike. So the only way to, for us to all get through this is really don't go out unless it's absolutely necessary. I mean, obviously people need, groceries, but only do it if you must. And just please stay safe, be aware of your face with everybody. And, we will get through this and get to that point. All right. So again, Bill, thank you so much. And to all of our listeners out there, thank you so much. And this is Roy Bjellquist. Live long and prosper, and hope to see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.